Okay, my name's Todd Ross. I'm the Managing Director of Nordic Nickel. We are listed on the ASX and started trading on the 1st of June this year. We have two highly prospective projects in Central Lapland Greenstone Belt, and we'll be exploring getting started with drilling in January.
Todd, good to have you on board.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're here in London. You're talking to lots of... In fact, you've been on the road a while now.
I have. Just too long.
Yeah, it's tiring.
Right.
People. It's more tiring than people realise.
Yeah.
But look, you're meeting new people, new investors, so that's all kind of a relative new story. So you set out to do what?
So, look, this is the first opportunity we've had to get out on the road and meet investors. Having two projects in Northern Finland, it's very important for us that we get our story out to the market in Europe in particular. So I set out to really make some initial contacts to get the opportunity to present directly to investors. And we've had a fantastic time over the last couple of weeks doing that.
Right. We're talking nickel today, broadly.
Yep.
Nickel. Northern Finland, I think most people sort of, point to gold up there. There's a few big successes going on up there. How did you pick up the asset, first of all?
So the assets we picked up from a company called Magnus Minerals, and they are a geological services business in Northern Finland, or in Finland. They are also a project incubator and generator. They've had this asset for a while, but it was previously explored by Outokumpu, so the state-owned Finnish mining company. And they had in fact made a discovery on that asset back in the 80s when they were drilling previously. But it sat there unloved in an area of the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt, relatively untouched for a number of years, and we managed to pick it up through a deal with Magnus. And
what did that deal look like? What's the structure?
So the deal was, originally was to be an incubated project, spent a couple of years with some seed capital before listing. We got access to all the drill core, relogged all of that and realised that the discovery had already been made, some massive sulphides that exist already. And so we did a deal. We ripped up the first deal. We did a new deal with Magnus. We now own the project 100%. So they effectively vended that project in, and they became a major shareholder of Nordic Nickel.
Right. It sounds like we need to understand the data, which you've reinterpreted. Okay.
Yes.
So it's better than you had hoped or thought. What did you find?
So we expected there would be near-surface disseminated nickel mineralisation. We found that tick. What we knew, there was some wide intersections of relatively low-grade nickel mineralisation there. What we didn't know existed was massive sulphides and some intersections that were encountered when we relogged that drill core that gave us some really good indications that there's potentially this accumulation of massive sulphides at depth, Sakatti style analogue, and that's really what we're chasing. Okay,
so give people a sort of picture of what that looks like, because we talk each week about nickel projects from all around the world, and some people are a little bit more comfortable with lower grade, and others like to see grades much higher. So what's yours look like?
So we have both near surface and we have the massive sulphides at depth. Right. So the near surface is really what the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt has historically been known for. The likes of the Kevitsa open pit operation, which is a very large, 304 million tonne, 0.21% nickel operation with copper and PGE credits. That's owned by Boliden, previously was First Quantum. That's what everyone understood the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt to typically host. When Anglo American discovered the Sakatti deposit, that was using modern geophysics, hasn't really been applied throughout the whole Central Lapland Greenstone Belt. It's using downhole EM and fixed loop EM. They used that to trace some of those downhole targets and then follow them at depth and drill it out. And Sakatti then was discovered through Anglo American using those methods. Because we've already got massive sulphides intersected in the near surface mineralisation, that's given us a really good indication that there's some accumulation of massive sulphides at depth.
Which is great. People automatically go to those sorts of projects require big balance sheets, and as an explorer, market cap, we're 25, 30,
25,
that sort of level, right?
Yep.
Depending on the time of day.
Yeah.
You're, you've got to kind of go through the phases here. So to go through the phases, you need to kind of keep delivering good news stories into market, right? And
Absolutely.
raise a higher price. That's the theory.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Tough market.
Yep.
You chose to list this year. Why?
Well, we listed, timing was great, actually. I mean, when we listed, the market was still pretty buoyant. We lodged the prospectus in April. We started trading the 1st of June. We raised 12 million through that IPO, which was fantastic. We still have plenty of cash in the bank. that funding that we have will last us for the first 2 years of our exploration program on our base case. I mean, if we can get another rig out there and start exploring sooner and have 2 rigs, then we'll do that. We'll probably churn through it.
So could convert that into meters. We understand the dollar term, but how many meters and what sort of depths are we drilling?
Yeah, so we're looking at drilling 22,000 metres over the next 14 months.
Okay.
And then potentially a little bit longer than that. But that's the start, the base case.
It's kind of interesting, actually, when we look at nickel companies in Canada, whether it be tenements type thing, they don't need to drill too many holes to be able to kind of put out seemingly very large numbers on what they think that they've got there. So what sort of models will you be employing? You know, obviously Finland, big mining jurisdiction, and there's some comps there that you can go. Would you look to Canada? What are you looking to in terms of the way you build this out?
Yeah, so look, first of all, perhaps maybe taking a step back, we've got 240 square kilometres of grounds in our area in the Pulju Project, and we've got the 2 projects, but our focus is on the Pulju Project. Of that 240 square kilometres, 5 square kilometres is where there was the historical drilling done by Outokumpu. Right. So there was 10,000 metres already drilled.
Right there, okay.
There's another 5,000 metres of drilling done by GTK, the Geological Survey of Finland. And we've got the benefit of those data points from that 15,000 metres of drilling that's already been done. As a newly listed company, that's a fantastic starting point. We can easily drill out the gravity lows, which is where typically the nickel has been found near surface, the disseminated nickel, and build out a resource. We put out a maiden resource in the first 6 weeks of listing, 133 million tonnes for 278,000 tonnes of nickel. So we already have that. We know that's a starting point. What we will be doing is testing the base of this cumulate layer to really look at where the accumulations of the massive sulphides at depth have occurred. And we're only focused on our 5 square kilometre area for now. So it's a very big belt, potentially district scale, but it's a small area that we're starting with because, as you just pointed out, we need to target in on what we think is where there's going to be the most value created early on. And that exploration licence that we have is only 2% or so of our land holding. Right. We've got heaps of EM targets already because we can get in and do downhole EM already on those historical holes. Okay,
so tell me a little bit about the team in country. Who's doing what?
Yeah. Look, we're very fortunate in that through the deal that we did with Magnus Minerals, they're one of the best geological services business in Finland. They're very active in the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt. They've got joint ventures with all the majors around Finland. They're our team in Finland. So our head of exploration in Finland is the head of Magnus Minerals exploration as well, and he's dedicated to our project. His partner, his wife, is also a geologist and part of the team, and then the geophysicist that works for Magnus Minerals is also on our team as well now. So we have excellent in-country team. We also have the ability to bring in other expertise from that business, from Magnus Minerals. We've also employed our own geological team for Nordic Nickel. We have a gentleman by the name of Lachlan Rutherford, who's a geologist based in Australia. And then we've also employed recently Julian Hanna, who's previously Managing Director of Mod Resources and Western Areas, very highly regarded nickel exploration geologist. He worked in Finland for years when he did a joint venture with Outokumpu back in the day as well. So we've got a really good team of people who understand nickel exploration, but also specifically.
Right, so very, very technical on the ground team. Your background's banking?
My background's banking.
Did you put this deal together?
No, so I came in after the original deal had been put together. The company that put the deal together, there's a private equity business called Starboard Global. A gentleman by the name of Robert Rickson, he's on our board as well. He's executive director of Nordic Nickel. He was looking for battery metals assets globally, and he got introduced to the Magnus team. And they originally put together that transaction where they put it in as a seed capital initially and then decided to rip that up and float the company. I got approached at that time and then worked with them on getting the IPO away.
Right, and so your role is what? I mean, are you doing anything else? Are you working with any other companies?
No, so my sole focus is on Nordic Nickel. I'm the managing director. My responsibility is really bringing the story to market and also effectively bringing all the project management skills and bringing the team together so that we can have a discovery in Finland.
Well, you think you've got one, don't you?
we've already got a starting point. So definitely, the resource that we've got is certainly getting lots of interest already.
Yeah.
If you draw a line in the sand and say 278,000 tonnes of nickel units already on a belt that is, district scale, and we're only talking about 2% of our overall area that we're focused on at the moment. We know we've already got a lot of value just in that alone. The EM conductors that we have are showing up lots of really interesting conductors at depth, and that's where we'll be drilling.
Well, the name of the game for exploration, quite frankly, is survival, number one, right? In a market like this.
Yep.
The nickel markets, it had a good run last year, apart from the positive blip, we'll call it, with the LME incident.
Yeah.
But it seems the price seems to be moving, but the equities don't seem to be moving.
Yeah.
I think, right. So it makes a kind of difficult kind of conversation for you, because I suspect a lot of nickel stories will be coming to market at the same time, trying to differentiate themselves. Clearly, the Finland component gives you something unique, because not too many of those stories out there. How do you take advantage of that? How do you take advantage of the fact that you're where you are? How do you get support from in-country? How do you get support from institutions in Europe? Because there's a European ecosystem forming, it seems, as an Aussie play.
Yeah, look, part of it is why we're here at the moment is obviously getting our story out there. It's the first opportunity we've had to do that. Look, the thematic of nickel, as we know, is incredibly strong. I think the latest forecast from Wood Mackenzie's is going to be a huge demand. By 2040, is more demand for nickel, class 1 nickel sulphides than there was in the entire market in 2020, for example. I think that's a pretty conservative estimate given the wave of infrastructure that's been put in place with the gigafactories being developed in Europe in particular. The big advantage that we have is the fact that in Finland, Europe's entire smelting and refining capacity for nickel exists in Finland and Norway only. That's it. There's nothing more outside of those two countries. We know that down the road from us is the Kevitsa mine, which is operating at a low grades, head grade. They have the benefit of the fact that they've got the smelter in Finland as well. They sell it directly into their own smelter, and then they're refining it and selling it into the EV market. Right. We have that value chain already existing for us, which is a big advantage. How are we going to tap into the investor market? I think it's getting that story out there. Australian investors are used to hearing the stories around, high-grade massive sulphides, Campbell-style ore bodies, that sort of thing. Gets a bit of excitement, but the mine life is generally fairly short. Yeah. We have a district scale project here that is getting the attention from the majors. If we're onto this project as big as we think we are, then we're certainly going to be here for a long time. And it's the sort of thing of scale that the majors want to see.
See, what interests me is how you play something like that, because the infrastructure that you described, we're getting to the meat of the conversation now, which a bit I like, the business planning side of things, where you're saying, right, that ecosystem exists today. It gives me an idea as an investor as to how you're going to play this for yourselves. There's no point in you saying, we're going to get $2 billion on our balance sheet to build this thing. You don't need to do that, right? But what the Canadians have done, which seems seemingly quite good, is that the drilling builds the tonnage, which makes it interesting for, if I quote like Canada Nickel or Giga Metals, and they've got the Japanese involved now putting equity, or the Koreans coming in putting equity into these companies, and it just getting the partners onto your books, and having either as equity holders or offtake partners or whatever. That is how you survive. So I'm intrigued as to, because you're right, the Aussies look at the super high grade stuff around and they go, oh, that is the model for nickel, but it's not.
It's not.
The Canadians are building up these huge tonnage, multi-decade, multi-generational projects, and so that's more in line with what you're going to be trying to do.
Absolutely. That is exactly what needs to happen and what we're focused on, because you're not going to fill a gap in a market of just 30,000 tons of nickel. You're going to be delivering into a market where they need hundreds of thousands of tons of nickel on an annual basis to be able to supply them for their needs to get to the energy transition.
With an already existing infrastructure.
With already existing infrastructure.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, look, as a first run, thank you very much for bringing the story to our attention.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Good luck the rest of the week.
Yep. Thank you.
And next week, it sounds like you're still on the road.
Yep.
And when you eventually get home, give us a call. Let's keep us up to date with how things are getting on.
Absolutely.
Okay?
We'll do. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.